Welcome to Fringe Pop 321, the show that believes the world is stranger than we think, but thinking should not be strange. The name Nelson Mandela is familiar to millions of people around the world. Some remember Mandela as an anti-apartheid revolutionary who wound up in prison for incendiary activities in South Africa. Others will think of his role as political leader, the president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999, that country's first black head of state, elected by a fully democratic process. Mandela was both a controversial and beloved man who left office in 1997 and passed away on December 5th, 2013. At least that's the way hundreds of millions of people remember things. Some, however, claim to remember Nelson Mandela passing away in prison in the 1980s. The insistence of the reality of an alternate history, allegedly verified by thousands of people who say they remember Mandela's death before most of the world says he died, has a name. You guessed it, and you likely knew it as soon as we started this episode. The Mandela Effect. And that's what this episode of Fringe Pop 321 is dedicated to. So get ready to learn something, or remember something, or maybe not remember something. Let's define our term a little bit more precisely. What exactly is the Mandela Effect? The term and the alleged phenomenon entered the public discourse almost 15 years ago. Fiona Broome, who referred to herself as a paranormal consultant, coined the term to describe the phenomenon of being convinced something is a particular way, only to discover you've misremembered it in some way. Broome claimed to have remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, and that thousands of people also remembered the same thing, quite contrary to the present record that Mandela had died in 2013. She claimed his death in the 1980s had been widely known, but history and reality had somehow changed. Broome cited other examples of reality change. For example, multitudes allegedly remember that the children's book, The Berenstain Bears, that's spelled A-I-N, had originally been spelled as the Berenstein or Berenstein Bears, spelled E-I-N at the end of the word. Another example is the famous line from Forrest Gump being remembered today as, "Mama always said life was like a box of chocolates." But at one time in another reality, the line was, "Mama always said life is like a box of chocolates." Now, many believers in the Mandela Effect believe something happened to the fabric of reality, thus changing the line. Incredibly, the idea has become a full-blown conspiracy theory due to the power of the internet. I've actually had people tell me the Mandela Effect can only be explained by a parallel universe, or that sinister physicists like cartoon figures, maybe Dr. Strangelove, had altered the space-time fabric of reality, or that the Mandela Effect proves demons have gone back in time or between dimensions, not to alter the event of the cross or something big like that, but to change the King James Version translation. Now, I'm not making any of this up. Really, I'm not. I've actually received desperate emails informing me about the Mandela Effect and the King James Bible and this movie or that movie or some other point of pop culture, asking me to fight to reveal the truth. Well, citizens, I'm here to answer the call. Now, the fundamental problem with the Mandela Effect theory is that it has only the statements or the memories of those who make alternative memory claims for support. The Mandela Effect theory has no scientific data behind it. Consequently, the entire idea is based upon circular reasoning, where what needs to be proven is simply assumed as factual. That is, the fact people make such a claim is viewed as proof of the claim. But you might say, well, that's not fair, Mike. What about parallel universes? Aren't they possible? Well, let's try and think clearly. There's a difference between possible and probable or even plausible. It's possible I could win a Nobel Prize and an Academy Award and be the next American Idol all in the same year. But none of those things are ever going to happen, much less that trifecta. This is the evidence dilemma of the Mandela Effect. Again, there's quite a difference between possible, probable, and plausible. At the bottom line, theories are not facts, questions are not answers, and equations in support of ideas like parallel universes are not data. To date, parallel universes exist only as theory and nothing more. To think otherwise is honestly to think poorly. But even if science proved there was an alternate universe, that actually doesn't help the Mandela Effect. Why, you ask? Well, because the Mandela Effect requires much more than that to be factual. The theory requires that such an alternate universe interact with our universe, or that those other universes have human beings, and that those human beings have traveled into and out of our universe. These claims are unprovable. They're non-falsifiable ideas. And unfalsifiable claims have long been the way pseudoscience operates. Such claims are the same as a rumor that begins with one person and then spreads. The only difference between a contrived rumor and its transmission and the Mandela Effect is scale. So what's really going on with the Mandela Effect, other than the viral influence of the internet, and I do intend a double meaning there? The key to explaining the Mandela Effect are false memory phenomena. According to Dagnall and Drinkwater, a cognitive psychologist and parapsychologist respectively, the Mandela Effect, quote, involves mistakenly recalling events or experiences that have not occurred, or distortion of existing memories. The unconscious manufacture of fabricated or misinterpreted memories is called confabulation. In everyday life, confabulation is relatively common. False memories occur in a number of ways, unquote. They go on to cite false memory research of various types, complete with demonstrable experiments. One example is called effort and meaning false memory, where psychologists found that listeners omitted unfamiliar details about a story, for example, and transformed information to make it more understandable to themselves and other people. Effort and meaning research has, quote, previously shown how when participants recall the contents of a psychologist's office, they tend to remember the consistent items, such as bookshelves, and omit the inconsistent items, like a picnic basket, unquote. The Forrest Gump line is actually a good example of another false memory category called memory errors and social misinformation. In an article about the Mandela Effect, Dagnall and Drinkwater explained that the reality is both versions of the Forrest Gump line in fact exist. Promotional material included the more familiar is phrase, life is like a box of chocolates, while the film version actually includes the was version. The contradiction arises from the fact that people are unaware that different versions actually exist. One particular Mandela Effect claim that's near and dear to my heart as a biblical scholar is that supposedly the Mandela Effect is demonstrable from changes to the King James Version of the Bible, the KJV. The claim is that sinister people have gone back in time to change the wording of the KJV, or maybe it's demons that are doing that. Now, this claim is frankly absurd and demonstrably false. Believe it or not, there are public domain scans of the original 1611 KJV freely available to test these claims. I've received emails citing dozens of alleged Mandela Effect changes to the KJV of 1611. I've looked them all up, and every one of them is bogus. I want to show you two examples. Here's Ezekiel 26:9 in the KJV, and I'm using for the text here a 1900 edition. It says, "And he shall set engines of war against thy walls, and with his axes he shall break down thy towers. Now, supposedly the word engines wasn't in use in 1611, and so this is a Mandela Effect change in the KJV. Well, wrong. Here's the original 1611 KJV of Ezekiel 26:9. Engines is there. Now, in 1611, this word was in use, and it just refers to any mechanical device, like siege warfare in the biblical context of Ezekiel 26. In the ancient world, there were mechanical devices used in various ways to besiege a city, and that's what Ezekiel's talking about. Here's a fun example, 2 Kings 18:27. Again, I'm using the 1900 edition of the KJV. But Rabshakeh said unto them, Hath my master sent me to thy master and to thee to speak these words? Hath he not sent me to the men which sit on the wall, that they may eat their own dung and drink their own piss with you? Now, supposedly, 1611 KJV English would not include vulgarities like dung and piss in the Bible. They must therefore be Mandela Effect changes. Again, it's wrong. These are standard 17th century English expressions for bodily functions. Here's the 1611 KJV to illustrate the point. Now, bear in mind the old spelling in Old English. Dung is spelled D-O-U-N-G, and the S letters look like F letters to our eye. Clearly, the KJV 1611 translators had no qualms about the words dung and piss. There they are in the 1611. So this language is normative, it was normative, and we don't need demons or anybody else traveling back through time to change the words of the King James Version. All of these claims about the KJV and the Mandela Effect are simply wrong. So what have we learned about the Mandela Effect? Well, I suppose it's not as dumb as the flat earth idea, but that honestly doesn't mean much. Aside from having zero scientific data behind it, it's cartoonishly illogical. I mean, let's think about it. Are we really to believe that if people were really moving back and forth between universes, the best use they'd make of such technology or ability is to change the names of children's books and movie lines? I mean, come on, really? And let's give demons some credit for not being morons. If they could use a tear in space and time to change things in the Bible, I'd think they'd want to change things like the resurrection of Jesus. It makes them middle schoolers, honestly, to have them playing around with words like dung and piss. Thanks for watching Fringe Pop 321. Please visit our website, fringepop321.com, for more information and examples concerning this episode and all our episodes. If you're interested in supporting what we do here, go to fp321.com/S, as in the letter S. And please come back again and watch more episodes, because what you know may not be so.